A lot of young undercovers, they they watch too much television. You know, they think, oh, the guy's a bad guy, so he's you got to sit there and drink all night, or you have to be yourself. That's basically one of the main stays of undercover. Do not change anything about your personality. Be who you are.
Joseph Dominic Pistone is a former FBI agent who infiltrated the Bonanno crime family in New York City during the 1970s under the alias Donnie Brasco.
Many of our listeners have probably seen the classic movie about Joe's experience, named, oddly enough, Donnie Brasco, starring Al Pacino and Johnny Depp.
We've talked to a lot of people about risk, but this may be close to or at the top of our list.
It's about selling yourself as something you're not, inside a group known for, shall we say, a lack of forgiveness, knowing you could be terminated if your true identity is discovered, and managing near constant risk.
And by the way, the evidence collected by Pistone led to hundreds of indictments and 247 convictions of Mafia members.
Speaking of managing risk, one place you don't want to take risk is with the water you drink.
With Culligan's drinking water systems, you can get the ultra-filtered water you need to fuel your high-performance lifestyle right on tap. Learn more at Culligan.com.
We caught up with Joe at an undisclosed location. So Joe Pistone, welcome to the Adrenaline Zone. Thanks for being with us. Talk about adrenaline. You have a remarkable story.
Well, I appreciate the invite, and it may be remarkable, but, a lot of people do remarkable things. So,
well, we usually like to start sort of at the beginning. So if you could tell our listeners how you got started in law enforcement and what drew you to the FBI, that would be awesome.
Well, actually, I always had thoughts of being a police officer. And I was a senior in college, and I took the exam for my local town that I grew up in, and I passed it. I got appointed. But then I realized I'd have to drop out of college to attend the rookie school. So I turned it down. And when I graduated college, I joined the naval intelligence. I went into naval intelligence. And I always knew that at some point in time I was going to get into law enforcement. And my first office actually was Philadelphia. I worked out of the Philadelphia Naval Base. And now it's, what is it, NCIS, I guess now. But when I was in, it was naval intelligence. And I worked very closely. You work very closely with the FBI. That's what got me my first taste of the FBI, working with the agents out of the Philadelphia office. And I worked with DEA also. So I took both exams. I took FBI has their own test, and DEA has it's the government. I forget what they call it. And I got called by the FBI first. So I went with the FBI. I mean, I probably would have waited. If I did get called by DEA first, I probably would have held off until I got a confirmation with the FBI, either yay or nay. So that's basically how I started out.
So you and my dad actually grew up in the same town. I don't know if we can say what that.
Yeah, you can.
They obviously, Patterson, New Jersey. They raise smart cookies there. I can tell you that.
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people come out of a lot of famous people, and I don't mean that I'm famous, but a lot of.
It's changed a lot since you were a kid, though, for sure.
Oh my goodness, but, a lot.
So you had a good background for a number of reasons for undercover work. But how did you actually get into doing undercover work? Because that's a different animal.
Yeah, well, I was, what I like to say, I was basically a street kid, because I grew up in an all Italian neighborhood, and there were wise guys in the neighborhood. You knew who the wise guys were. It wasn't any big secret in the neighborhood who they were. And you got to know them. you didn't get to see the treachery. You just got to see the nice cars and guys dressing nice and flashing money, and a kid from the neighborhood. They allow you around the social club. They didn't chase you because they knew you were a kid from the neighborhood. So I I knew what the street life was about. So when I went into the bureau, I worked basically everything. I worked bank robberies, fugitives, prostitution cases, gambling cases, and I wasn't a babe in the woods when it came to the street. I could blend in with bad guys. And what I mean by that, I wasn't intimidated by bad guys because I grew up around a lot of bad guys. So I think that's how I got started. First by going into gambling dens. Back then, we were big into interstate gambling, and I don't know how much gambling they do now as far as investigations, but it was big back then. I worked a lot of interstate prostitution cases, worked a lot of bank robberies and burglaries, a lot of bank burglaries, which was big in the South at the time, which was my first office. And I just felt comfortable talking to these guys. Once you arrest them, you interview them, interrogate them. And so that's basically how I got into the undercover was with the gambling cases. I would go into gambling dens and gambling and strike up conversations with people. And then it just progressed from there, got into buying stolen art.
So was this on your initiative, or did the FBI ask you to do it, or did you have to go to the FBI and say, look, I can do this?
Back then, in my early years, the FBI really didn't have an undercover program. The guys did it on their own. You had a case, or somebody in your office had a case, and they needed somebody to get close to the bad guys, or they had an informant that would bring somebody around to introduce them to the bad guys. And like I said, I knew how to conduct myself on the street. So I was asked, hey, you think you can do this? And yeah, I can do that. Growing up, I did some gambling in the neighborhood and stuff. So I knew about gambling. But that's how it got started. And then, when, big cases came up, as far as, I was asked if I wanted to do them, and I did them, and knock on wood, I was successful. And I think the reason I was successful is because I didn't judge the bad guys. It wasn't like, I'm going to get you, you SOB, because you're a gangster. To me, it didn't make any difference. You're a gangster, you're a gangster. That's your decision. It's not my decision. So I just went about the investigative work rather than having something against these guys, and I didn't, and that came across too. I think in getting accepted in the different undercover roles, because I didn't have this shield that you're a gangster and I'm not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You just fit in better.
Yeah. And I think that's why I was successful in all my undercover cases, because my only mission was, hey, you're breaking a law. If I could get evidence to get you into the courtroom, that's fine. If I can't, that's fine too. Like in my 6-year undercover operation, there were guys that I didn't even bother with because, they might have been doing, I know there were a couple guys, they were married guys, they had kids, and, they weren't doing anything bad. They may have been stealing something off a truck or something like that, but it wasn't anything that was really hurting anybody.
You had to make some choices.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I was going to ask how you train for going undercover, but it sounds like it's just natural the way you grew up. You had the right skill sets to blend in, and that was kind of your training.
Exactly. That's what it was. Because like I say, back then we didn't really have an undercover program like they have now, which I am proud to say that I was one of the originators of it. We didn't have a program to look out for the welfare of the undercovers and their families, which I am very proud of that. I was one of the initiators of that program. Back then it was just guys that, there were several of us, maybe throughout the whole country, maybe 25, 30 guys that did these little undercover jobs. And all these guys were guys that grew up in the cities and,
So with that natural street training, how long did it take to learn whatever else that you needed to learn to infiltrate an actual crime family? Or were you just really just kind of went for it?
An operation like that one, I had just come off a 1.5 year operation where I infiltrated an auto theft gang that was operating up and down the East Coast. And what that entailed was you came to them and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a Mercedes Benz." And okay, what color do you want? What interior do you want?
You're kidding.
And then,
Yeah.
and then,
Oh my God.
and then they'd go out and, go to the Mercedes Benz dealership at night and hook them. The one thing you have to do though is when you undertake an undercover operation, you have to know your legend. You have to, if you say you're a car thief, you better know how to steal cars. So what I did then, when I was asked to infiltrate that, one of the agents had an informant that was a car thief. So he taught me how to steal cars, how to get underneath, disarm the alarm systems. He taught me how to steal cars.
So
I guess you don't have to worry about losing your car keys. If you ever lose your car keys, you just steal your own car.
Yeah, go on.
So that brings to mind the biggest operation you did, where the film came out.
Yeah, the 6 year under
when you came
Mafia.
up with the cover story around Donnie Brasco. Tell us about that and how you got set up.
Well, what happened was I was assigned to the New York office. I came back from this 1.5 year operation, and I had a very supervisor was a New Yorker. Another guy although he was a graduate of Notre Dame, he was a street guy. He had the truck hijacking squad, and back then they're probably losing about 7, 8 tractor trailer loads a day. Now I'm talking about high end commodities, like pharmaceuticals, lobsters. I mean, anything that was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, as far as the tractor was concerned, the load in the tractor. And he had an idea. Nobody had ever infiltrated the mob before, and it was all controlled by the Mafia. I mean, there wasn't anything back in the day that happened in New York criminally that the Mafia wasn't either involved in or directed and got a piece of. So the idea was to try to infiltrate the fences that were fencing the stolen goods. So again, you can't have a profession that's one of violence. It's against the government regulations. So we decided, well, how about a jewel thief? Good, because, a jewel thief deals in stolen jewelry. He deals with fences. So I went to school. I actually went to school and learned about diamonds and precious gems, because that's the first thing that's going to trip you up when you're in conversation, if you don't know what your background, what your legend is. So I went to school, learned about diamonds, precious gems, And then, you have to back that up. If you're a jewel thief, you got to know how to pick locks. You got to know you got to know about alarm systems, and you have to know about safes. So I was taught that by our people, and all of that probably took about maybe 5-6 months, where I felt comfortable, looking at a diamond or looking at a precious gem and picking locks, et cetera, et cetera. And we did this operation without any contacts. And what I mean by that is everything was done as a regular person would. I had a driver's license already that I just went and got. I just went and, I had a birth certificate that was provided for me. I had all of those papers that the Bureau made. We didn't count on any outside contacts to help us. And I rented my own apartment, bought a car, all under the name Donnie Brasco. And what we did was we had certain bars and restaurants targeted that we knew that these individuals hung out in. And I would just go out every night, and it's a 7-day-a-week job. And I just go to these different places every night and go in and, grab something to eat, because, you don't walk into places that that the mob hangs out in, or bad guys walk in and tell them that you're a jewel thief, and you want to do business with them. You got to get into some kind of conversation with them. Also, what you have to know is you have to know who you're targeting. You got to, you have to know your enemy. I'm sure you guys know that. The art of war, know your enemy, right? So I was again, I had an advantage because I knew about the mob. I knew how the mob operated. I knew, you kept your mouth shut. You just listened. And all of the ABCs about the Mafia. And it took me about probably 6 months before anybody would even talk to me. I just hit all these places every night, different places. And then finally I got into conversation with a bartender, and it led to him. Actually, what happened is that one of the rules, the Mafia has certain rules. Some will get you killed and some won't. One of the rules is you have to dress nice. They want you to be neat at all times. They don't like long hair. They don't like beards and mustaches. And at the time I had a thick mustache, and I'm getting ahead of it. But when I did finally infiltrate, they told me, look, Donnie, you got to shave that mustache off. So I shaved it off, but some of the things that'll get you killed is that, one of the rules is you don't mess around with a made guy. Now, a made guy is somebody that's been officially inducted into a Mafia family. Okay. And there's several Mafia families. New York is the biggest. They have 5. And to be inducted, you have to be white, male, and Italian. The Mafia is not an equal opportunity employer, You have to be white, male, and Italian. And
you happen to fit that.
Yeah, I fit that role. But one of the rules that'll get you killed is you don't fool around with a made guy. And again, a made guy is somebody that's been officially inducted into a family. You don't fool around with his wife, girlfriend, or daughter. That'll get you killed. So I used to go to this one place, and I always sat at the bar in any of these places. And I'm not a drinker. I mean, my drinking limit is a half a bottle of beer or a glass of red wine. I don't drink any more than that. And I maintained that. I think that's another reason I was successful, because I didn't try to be like these guys. Like, a lot of young undercovers, they watch too much television. They they think, oh, the guy's a bad guy, so he's you got to sit there and drink all night, or you have to be yourself. That's basically one of the main stays of Undercover. Do not change anything about your personality. Be who you are. And I worked in bars. My dad had bars, so I bartended since I was able to. But I never became a drinker. I just, like I say, it's a half a bottle of beer. Even to this day, if I have a bottle of beer, I only can drink half of it. And maybe if I have a glass of wine, it's one glass of wine. That's it.
So, if I may, I'm wrestling with something. You said you went out every night to all these different bars, and so how did that sounds like a full-time 24/7 job? How did that work with taking breaks or visiting your family, or did you just not do that?
You just don't do it. You don't do it.
Wow.
My family lived across the country. Actually, you have your own apartment. When you're in a deep cover situation, the only identification you have on is your fake identification. You don't have anything that you don't have your FBI credentials, your FBI badge. You don't carry a gun. I mean, you just have your Donnie Brasco driver's license and whatever you have under Donnie Brasco. That's it.
So,
and your wits.
Yeah.
So for 6 years, you were away from your family in this deep.
Yeah. Well, I'd get home like maybe once every 7-8 months for, overnight, maybe 2 nights.
That's hard.
Yeah. But hey, it's no harder than, being in the military, I mean.
Yeah. Being deployed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The only difference is here, when you're in the military, you have no choice. Here it's a voluntary assignment. Being an undercover agent is voluntary. You volunteer. They can't tell you got to take an undercover assignment in the FBI anyway. I don't know about other agencies.
You live to embrace risk in the air, on the slopes, and anywhere your determination takes you. But when it comes to the drinking water that fuels your adventures, you're not looking to take chances.
With cutting-edge filtration that can target contaminants as small as a single atom, Culligan's reverse osmosis filtration systems deliver the next-level hydration you need to keep working at peak performance, whatever the day brings.
Get started by scheduling your free water test at Culligan.com. How did you go about, this is a show about risk, and obviously you took an enormous amount of risk. I cannot imagine how that had to weigh on you, but how did you evaluate what risks were worth taking versus something that could blow your cover or endanger your life? Constant thinking, constant.
Yeah, just constant. Another thing too, you can't tell too many lies because you're going to get caught. So that's why, you try to stay as close to the truth as possible. Of course, your background, you try to stay close, to what you know. And again, a lot of times you just put it out of your mind, once it's hard to explain, but it's just, to me, it was just a job. It was another form of conducting an investigation. And even once I got embedded with these guys, I mean, and I really I had no surveillance in New York. I was by myself, because, you're dealing in New York. It's hard to surveil. Now, I mean, I had surveillance a couple times when I knew I was going to be in a conversation that had to be recorded. So I wore a transmitter. So that it could be recorded, but probably 98% of the time I was out there by myself.
Do you think it would be harder to get away with that now with all of the information available?
Yeah,
on everybody everywhere?
Yeah, it could be done, but The only thing that's changed about Undercover is exactly what you said, the internet. The internet. Somebody can type in Donnie Brasco and you got to come up with something. So it like back before the internet became really prevalent, because I was also in the unit that provided, once I got out of my undercover roles, that provided legends to agents. I mean, back then we can guarantee you like 98% that this thing is going to hold. In fact, we backstopped the guy from birth right through the day that he applied to a police academy to become a policeman, because we had information that a certain district in this one police department were ripping off people and robbing them and et cetera. So and this guy passed the background. Now it's tough. You can't provide that 98% because of the internet. So it's kind of hard as far as a foolproof legend. But back when I started,
pretty straightforward.
It was pretty straightforward. There were certain things like you never said you did time in the penitentiary because they could check that. I mean, that's easy, Well, where did you do time with? And you couldn't talk about doing time in the penitentiary, so you did 30 days in the county jail. I mean, that's what was on my record, 15 days in the county jail, and nobody could check that.
So along those lines, then, you comment about staying in your character and trying to stay truthful as much as possible. Can you describe a challenging moment where you had to stay in character despite intense pressure, or it was, where you're having to watch every word because you're kind of on the edge of that line?
Yeah, you have to, because there were several occasions. Like one occasion was, I don't know if you guys are old enough, but do you remember the app scam investigation where we had a big undercover operation going against politicians? And the FBI had a boat down in Fort Lauderdale, and they had taken the politicians out on this boat. And the boat captain actually was an FBI agent who had all this license, and he was. And so we used to go down to Florida a lot. When I say we, I'm talking about once I infiltrated these guys, the bad guys, and they liked to, go out fishing. So I made arrangements to go out in this app scam boat, which name of it was the Left Hand. And we go out. And first of all, I was told that the operation isn't going to surface. We're not going, we're going to go as long as we could go. Well, after about a month and a half, the press found out about the app scam operation, and they wouldn't hold the story. The Bureau went to them, and they wouldn't hold the story. And they even told them, look, we got other undercover operations so it came out, and the picture of the boat, I think it was on Newsweek, the magazine, Newsweek. That was, yeah. And I'm with one of the bad guys who became my Mafia partner, Ruggiero, and his name was Lefty. So we're on an airplane, and back then, they had magazines on the airplane. And he picks up this magazine and he sees the boat, and he said, "You recognize this boat?" I said, "No, I don't recognize the boat." And I said, "We were on that boat." I said, "No, we weren't. How could we be on that boat?" He said, "Donnie, don't tell me we weren't on that boat." He said, "What's the name of that boat?" And it says Left Hand. He said, "What's my name?" I said, Lefty. He said, "We were on that boat. How did you get us on that boat?" So I went into this whole story. I said, "Don't you remember we were in San Diego, and we were having dinner, and there was these two ladies having dinner at the next table, and you offered to buy their dinners, and we start talking to them, and the one says, "Hey, you guys go to Miami at all?" And I went into the whole, yeah, we go down to Miami. And she says, "Well, my brother has a boat in Fort Lauderdale. If you guys ever want to go, here's his name and number. Call him, and just mention my name, and he'll take you out." He bought it, but but did he buy it 100%? Well, it went on for 4 more years, so I guess he did.
Wow.
I guess so.
That's creative on the spot.
Yeah. A little anchor bias there.
Yeah, right.
Confirmation bias. Yeah. So you wrote a book titled "The Way of the Wise Guy." So for our listeners, if you want to learn more about this, definitely get that book. But there are a lot of interesting chapter names in that book. So without spoiling the whole thing, I thought one of them was really cool. It was called "A Typical Day in the Life of a Wise Guy." Can you kind of walk us through that?
Well, what we
wake up?
Yeah, what we would do, you wake up in the morning, and whatever crew you're with, and the families are broken down into crews, and there's a captain. The mafia, the structure is not unlike the military or a police force, because you have a boss, then you have an underboss, and then you have caporegimos or captains, and then under the captains are the soldiers. Now, all these guys have been officially inducted into that family. And then you have associates. And the associates are individuals who are waiting to get inducted. Okay. In other words, they're trying to prove that they're good earners. They have respect for the family. But the associates can also be non-Italians, as long as they're doing something for the family, bringing in money, or have it in with politicians or judges or law enforcement. So, you do get up in the morning. You have to go down and check in with your captain. You hang around the social club. You have a nice lunch. Generally, they like Chinese food. You play cards. Then you go home. You come out. You meet back up someplace, maybe 9, 10 o'clock at night, and you go out hanging out. If you don't have any scores to do, any robberies to do, or whatever, they just go out. What they say, bouncing around. You go to different clubs and conduct business, whatever it is, whatever illegal businesses that you're involved in. And you might get home at 3, 4 in the morning. Then you start over again the next day.
That sounds rather monotonous.
Well, actually, it is. I used to tell you a funny story. I became very close with my captain. And actually, he was one of the street bosses of the family, because the real boss was in jail. So my captain was a pretty high up there, respected guy in the Bonanno family. I was with the Bonanno family, and my apartment was uptown. I had an apartment at 92nd and 3rd Ave. And if I didn't feel like, and this was in Brooklyn, and if I didn't feel like, going home, I'd stay in his apartment, and I'd sleep on his couch, and we'd get up in the morning, and here's the funny, this guy was he was a powerful guy in the Mafia, in the Bonanno family. He'd go across the street to the bakery and get us coffee and a hard rolling butter. If you're from New York, hard rolling butter and a coffee. And then he'd come back, and then we lift weights. He had weights in his apartment. We lift weights in his apartment, hang out. And then his social club was downstairs. He had pigeons. We go up and feed his pigeons on the roof. And then we go down to the social, downstairs, maybe about 12:30. And and start over again, And that's 7 days a week. I mean, it's a grind. And some of these guys aren't dummies. If some of these guys put their brains to legitimate businesses, they'd be millionaires without the fright of going to jail. I mean, every day it's like, is today the day I go to jail? Is today the day I get arrested? Or is it today the day I get killed?
That's a horrible way to live.
That's what they wake up to every morning.
Yeah. Any other humorous moments that you were able to have during all of this undercover work, or was it just monotony?
No, there's some humor. I mean, guys, and that's another thing too, is that you got to realize you're dealing with human beings. So some of them are funny. Some of them have, don't mean to be funny, but they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody has a personality, and it's the same thing with these guys. I mean, some and all of them are killers. Everybody that hung that I was hanging with had killed people. So but you're talking to them and you would never know it. I mean, but some of them are just miserable. But there are a lot of miserable, legitimate people too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're just humans. But it's, I don't know, I guess it's the idea of getting over on society. But it's a crazy life. I mean, it's a crazy life.
So speaking of killing people, tell our listeners how it all ended in real life. I mean, you were a victim of your own success in a way, right?
Yeah, actually, I had infiltrated the Bonanno family so deeply and thoroughly that I was actually going to be inducted into the family.
Which is the problem.
Yeah. But what happened is that there was a rift within the family because like I said, they had killed one boss, and the other boss that got appointed was in jail. So, as I said, Sonny Black, who was my captain, was the acting street boss of the family. But there were three other captains that were not aligned with the boss that was in jail. So there was a rift going on between these three captains and the rest of the family. And they had what they called a sit down. And what that is a meeting. And when these three captains showed up at this appointment, Sonny Black and his guys, they killed these three individuals. So now we had a shooting war. And I was given a contract to kill one guy that didn't show. So I was supposed to kill him. I never found him. The Bureau didn't find him. So that's basically why we shut it down, because of the war going on.
And the expectation that you would have to do something.
Well, if I found that guy, I would. It's a dicey situation, because when you're given a contract by your captain to kill somebody, you don't refuse it, because if you refuse it, then you're going to get killed too. Now the deal was, if I found them and there wasn't any other bad guys around, I would call my contact in the FBI and say, hey, Bruno's at such and such a place, and they would arrest him.
Make him disappear.
Make him disappear, like it, and stage a hit. And if they got him, we do the same thing. But if I found them and the other the other gangsters were with me, it would have been a tough decision, because I think Bruno would have had to get killed, because I wasn't gonna get killed for a gangster. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, the decisions you have to make. I mean, if after 5.5 years with these, with this, I was with the Colombos first, and then I was with 5.5 years with the Bonannos. I'm going to say to them, "Hey guys, I'm really an FBI agent," and they're going to say,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah, Donnie." So my my mindset was he's going, and then I'll deal with the government later on, because there's no trials, there's no, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of guys don't understand that.
And that's what we tell our special operations people. If you're going in to get a terrorist, it's like, your job is not to go in and get yourself killed. This terrorist is not worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Keep yourself alive.
Yeah.
You're too important.
What happened after that undercover 6-year trial? When you emerged from that, was that the end of your FBI career, or did you?
No. It actually, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I testified in. Actually, as long as an undercover operation was, that's how long I testified. I testified for 6 years after that too.
Oh wow!
All told, I think I was in 22 trials.
You were probably getting some pretty ugly looks from the defendants.
Yeah. And then I was assigned to Quantico in the undercover unit at Quantico. And when the bureau, what happened was, when we decided to take the operation down, the FBI went to Sonny Black and said, "Hey, this guy is Donnie Brasco, is really an undercover FBI agent." Well, they didn't believe it. So they thought that the FBI had kidnapped me and was brainwashing me and trying to turn me into an informant.
Oh my gosh.
And then they finally, when the some of the indictments start to come out, then the defense attorneys, they said, "Hey, this guy's really an undercover agent." Well, they killed the guy, the Colombo guy that I was with in the beginning. They killed Sonny Black, and they killed a guy by the name of Tony Mira, who actually brought me into the Bonanno crime family. And they put a $500,000 contract down on me and sent guys all over the country, wherever we, different places that I was with them.
Wow. So all that risk taking, Joe, 200 indictments, 100 convictions. And is it true that for that you got like a $500 bonus?
Yeah, but I don't know where that. We actually had 247 convictions. So,
okay.
I don't know.
So much for the internet.
Yeah, somebody put that on the internet, and I don't know where the hell that came from. But we actually,
that's amazing.
In all the trials, yeah. So and like I said, the things that I'm really proud of that operation is that we got an 2-week undercover school out of it. We were able to do that. Was able to get what we call a safeguard unit to look out for the well-being of the undercovers and their families. They were two good things that, aside from the convictions, and that was the wheel that really got the government. When I say the government, the bureau, going after the hierarchy of the mafia, because after that we convicted every mafia boss in New York City. And boss of every family we convicted in New York City, and even the ones that took their place, we convicted them. And now everybody starts becoming informants. And today the mafia, the American mafia, is just another organized crime group.
So is it harder though, because of the shock at what you were able to accomplish? Is it harder for people to penetrate now because they're way more paranoid?
Yeah, it is. There hasn't been any deep cover penetrations, and they're really not doing those. They have long-term operations, but it's operations where they have businesses going. they don't have too many operations where the undercover's out there by himself, running with the bad guys on a 7-day, 365-day operation. And a lot of my intro was cold. I didn't have anybody introduce me. I didn't have an informant introduce me or anything. So, and people don't want to do it either. I mean, I can't blame them. They don't want to give up their families and move away from their families.
Yeah.
That's hard.
They don't mind doing short term, but nobody wants to do long term anymore.
So, Joe, let's have a little fun in the time we have left. Let's turn to the film, Donnie Brasco. I'm assuming you spent time with Johnny Depp.
Yeah, I spent
through how he wanted to portray you. How was that?
Well, I don't know what you read about him, but Johnny Depp is a great guy. And back then, to me as a kid, I mean, even though
I thought he did a fantastic job as an actor, but I don't. Yeah,
he did a great job. Back then he was, I guess, 30 years old, and he's a wonderful person. I can't say enough. We're still good friends today. Friends with his father, friends with his sister. I keep in contact with him. I can tell you some great stories about him that he would never publicize. As far as as far as him helping people and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He lives in a crazy world. Hollywood.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is.
Says the guy who lived with the mob for 6 years.
Well, let me tell you something. I'd rather live with the mob than live with some of these people in Hollywood. Believe me, some of these studio heads.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, there's an iconic scene in this movie where Donnie explains to you that forget about it has multiple meanings, right?
Yeah.
Was that a real conversation you had, or was it kind of creative?
That was Hollywood, but forget about it was a word that we always, they always used, and the Paul Antonaggio, the writer, he played with it, and that's what he came up with that scene.
So having lived through this, and they made a movie, of course, from your experience. What about other films like Wise Guys? Do you have any other movies that you think capture the essence of what you lived through?
What's the one with Ray Liotta? Was that?
That's Wise Guys. That was Wise Guys.
Was that? Yeah, that was pretty much on him. Because it shows the treachery, how these guys are jealous of each other, and the treachery that goes on. There's a lot of backstabbing because I'm making more money than you. You're closer to the boss than I am. There's a lot of jealousy. Yeah.
Wow. I guess though, and that happens in a lot of jobs, but I guess in that world it can be fatal.
Yeah, in that world it can be, because look, I had the guy that brought me into the Bonanno family try to have me killed 3 times, because he was jealous. He went to jail, got out of jail. I was close now with Sonny Black and Lefty Ruggiero. And, he thought I was making a ton of money and he should be making that money. So, he called what they have sit downs, and you bring for lack of a better word, your attorney. And, he's not an attorney. He just, and he brings his people.
Yeah. Advocate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, luckily I had Sonny Black, and, he won the 3 sit. If you lose that type of sit downs, because one of the things is you don't steal money from a family, and that's what he alleged, they would have killed me right there, But Sonny won them, so here I am.
Anxious moments.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, look, we're pretty much out of time, but let me tell you something. What a fantastic discussion! I got so much respect for what you had to do to get that done.
Well, thank you.
And frankly, people are always saying, thank you for your service and that kind of thing. But you're kind of an unsung hero. People like you who spend months and months and months away from your family, take enormous amounts of risk to try to keep our nation safe from people who are doing bad things, right? So thank you.
Well,
Yes,
thank you, and
absolutely.
thank you guys for what you did.
It's like super amazing story.
Thank you.
That was former FBI undercover agent and inspiration for the film Donnie Brasco, Joe Pistone. I'm Sandra Magnus.
And I'm Sandy Winnefeld. Thanks again to Culligan for sponsoring this episode. Get exceptional water for exceptional performance. Learn more at culligan.com.
And please pass our podcast around to your friends, and we'll see you soon for another fun episode of The Adrenaline Zone.